So let's talk about creating pods. Now, just a small caveat here, you shouldn't be creating pods manually. We're only doing it here just because it's easier to demo it and it's easier to explain it. Once we get to later videos, when we talk about replica sets and deployments, you will see why you should not be creating pods manually. One of the reasons is that if your pod crashes, it'll be gone. It'll never come back. So let's create a simple pod. I'm going to create a file called pod.yaml, and I'm going to paste the YAML representation of this pod into the file. Now, in the first couple of lines of this YAML, we're defining the kind of resource we're creating. So the resource kind in our case is pod. And right after that, we are setting up some metadata. The metadata includes the name of our pod, which is hello-pod, a set of labels, and it could also include things like annotations. The labels are just simple key value pairs. In our example, the key of the label is the left part before the colon, and the value of the label is hello on the right side. On line 7 in the spec section, we are describing how the pod should look like. So in this pod, we will have a single container that's going to be called hello-container. And this container will use an image called busybox. Additionally, when the container starts, we want to execute the command that's defined in the command field. So what we're going to do is we will echo hello from my container, and then we're going to sleep. To create this pod, I will use Kubernetes CLI called kubectl. I also have Minikube already installed and running. So if I run kubectl get nodes, you will see that I have a single node running Minikube. So let's create this. Pod. So I'm going to use kubectl apply -f to provide the file, and I'm going to type in pod.yaml. Kubernetes will respond with the resource type and the name that was created. So it was pod/hello-pod was created. And then we can use kubectl get pods to list all the pods that are running in the default namespace of this cluster. In our case, there's just a single pod that we just created called hello pod. So let's look at that message that we're outputting in the container. So in order to look at the logs from the container or the pod, actually container inside the pod, we will use the logs command. So we will type Kubernetes kubectl logs hello-pod. And this will return hello from my container, the thing that we actually have in the command field. Now, if we delete this pod, the pod will be gone forever because there's nothing running that would automatically restart it. So let's do kubectl get pods again, just to show that the pod is there. And then I will use kubectl delete pod and hello-pod. So most of the commands that you're passing to the Kubernetes CLI follow the same pattern. So it's kubectl action resource type, and then the name of the resource. So let's do this. And that should take a couple of seconds. So as soon as this is completed, it will mean that the pod is gone. So this is taking way too long, so I'll just cancel out here. And I'll say kubectl get pods. And it looks like the pod is still being terminated. So we can do kubectl describe command to see what's happening, if there's anything interesting. Describe pod. All right, so it looks like it was deleted already. Okay, so there's no resources found in default namespace because we deleted the pod. Now in this case, we've deleted the pod manually. However, the same would have happened if the pod would crash, for example. So if the pod crashes, it will never come back. So in order to keep the pod up and running or to restart the pod automatically after it crashes, we need a controller. So this controller then ensures that the pod gets automatically rescheduled if it gets deleted or if something bad happens. So if the cluster nodes go down, then the pods will need to get evicted and moved to different nodes.